Zethkar stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the strange vessels through the main screen. The human ships looked wrong somehow. They were too small, too simple. No elegant curves or proud armor plating like Vorthani ships, just basic metal boxes floating in space. "Are we sure these are warships?" asked Sub-Commander Vexth, his mandibles clicking with amusement. Zethkar studied the readings again. The humans had arrived at Kepler 7b 3 days ago, mining the same crystal deposits his fleet needed. Intelligence reports said humans were new to space travel. They had only left their home world 50 years ago. Babies, compared to the Vorthani's 1,000-year history among the stars. "They carry weapons," Zethkar replied. "Basic kinetic projectiles. Nothing that could harm our shields. The crystals on Kepler 7b were worth fighting for. They powered the best starship engines in the galaxy. Every species wanted them. But Zethkar had orders not to attack humans without cause. The Galactic Council was watching this first contact carefully. His communications officer looked up. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through." A human face appeared on screen. Female, with dark hair and serious brown eyes. She wore a simple uniform with strange markings. "This is Captain Sarah Chen, of the Earth Alliance ship Endeavor. We detect your fleet approaching our mining operation. Please state your intentions." Zethkar activated his translator and replied, "I am War Commander Zethkar, of the Vorthani 3rd Battle Fleet. These crystals belong to my people by right of discovery." The human captain smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I'm afraid our records show we arrived first, but perhaps we can work something out." Before Zethkar could respond, alarms began screaming across his bridge. His sensor operator called out in panic. "Commander, new contacts. 50. No. 100 ships coming out of hyperspace." Zethkar felt his spine plates rise in alarm. On the screen, he saw them. Black ships with jagged edges, moving like living things. Devourer vessels. The Devourers were the nightmare of every spacefaring species. They consumed other beings to make themselves stronger. They turned captured ships into weapons. They never stopped, never negotiated, never showed mercy. Captain Chen's voice came through the speakers again. "Commander Zethkar, I think our mining dispute just became much smaller." On the tactical display, Zethkar watched the Devourer swarm spread out. Some headed for his fleet. Others moved toward the human ships. A few broke off toward the mining station on Kepler 7b's surface. "They want the workers," Zethkar muttered. "Fresh biomass to feed their growth." "Commander," his weapons officer reported, "the Devourers are jamming long-range communications. No one can call for backup." Zethkar made a quick decision. Pride was important, but survival came first. "Open a channel." To the human captain. Captain Chen appeared on screen again. Behind her, Zethkar could see her crew working with calm efficiency. No panic, no shouting. Just quiet focus. "Captain Chen, I propose a temporary alliance. The Devourers are our common enemy." "Agreed," she said without hesitation. "Our ships can't take them alone. But together, we might have a chance." Within minutes, the two fleets were coordinating their defense. Zethkar found himself working directly with a human marine commander named Captain Torres. The man was smaller than any Vorthani warrior, with soft pink skin and no natural armor. "Our weapons are different from yours," Torres explained over the communication link. "We use bullets and explosives. Simple but effective." Zethkar tried to hide his amusement. "Bullets? Against Devourer bioarmor?" But he was polite. "We use plasma cannons and particle beams. Perhaps our weapons can work together." The first battle was chaos. Devourer ships moved like hunting animals, attacking from unexpected angles. Their hulls seemed to heal damage in real time. But the combined fleet fought them off, destroying 12 enemy vessels while losing only 3 ships. After the battle, Zethkar met with the human commanders in person. They gathered in the human ship's meeting room. Zethkar had to duck to fit through their low doorways. Captain Chen looked tired but alert. Our scouts report more devourers coming, maybe 3 times as many. We need to evacuate the mining station and find a defensible position. Captain Torres pointed to a tactical display. The main mining complex on asteroid Kepler 7b is heavily fortified. It has shields, armor plating, and defensible choke points. We could hold there. Zethkar studied the human faces around the table. They talked about the coming battle like they were discussing the weather. No fear in their voices. No desperate boasting like young Vorthani warriors might show. What about casualties? Asked Zethkar. The station can only hold so many people. Captain Chen looked at him directly. We estimate 60% casualties in the first day, maybe 80% by day 3. The matter-of-fact way she said it made Zethkar's skin crawl. Among his people, warriors faced death with songs and honor ceremonies. These humans discussed death like a mathematical problem. Those are acceptable numbers, added Captain Torres. The important thing is stopping the devourers here. If they take this system, they'll have the resources to build a much larger fleet. Acceptable numbers, acceptable losses. The humans used these phrases like they meant nothing. But Zethkar saw something in their eyes. A cold calculation that disturbed him more than fear would have. The evacuation began immediately. Thousands of miners and support staff were loaded onto transport ships. The combined military forces prepared to make their stand on the mining station. As his shuttle descended toward Kepler 7b, Zethkar watched the human transports land. He expected to see confusion, panic, or at least normal fear. Instead, he saw organized efficiency. Human soldiers moved with purpose, setting up defensive positions with practiced ease. One human medic was already treating wounded from the space battle. She worked on a Vorthani warrior with damaged spine plates, her small hands surprisingly gentle. When the warrior thanked her, she just nodded and moved to the next patient. Interesting allies, muttered Subcommander Vexth. Zethkar nodded, but said nothing. Something about the humans bothered him. They were too calm, too ready for what was coming, like they had planned for this kind of hopeless battle before. On the horizon, he could see more devourer ships entering the atmosphere. The siege was about to begin, and Zethkar was starting to think he didn't really understand his human allies at all. The mining station shook as another wave of devourer creatures slammed against the outer walls. Zethkar checked his weapon charge and looked around the command center. Human and Vorthani soldiers worked side by side at control panels, their faces lit by warning lights. How many more are out there? He asked Captain Chen. She looked at her scanner display. Our best guess? About 10,000 ground troops. Maybe more landing every hour. 10,000. Zethkar felt his stomach drop. The combined force defending the station had barely 800 soldiers. The numbers were impossible. Sir, called out a human communications officer. We're getting reports from the perimeter. The devourers are testing our defenses. Small groups, probing for weak spots. Captain Torres pointed to the tactical map. They're learning. Every attack teaches them something new about our weapons and positions. Zethkar knew about devourers from intelligence reports, but seeing them in action was different. They adapted faster than any enemy he had faced. Each fallen devourer became biomass for the hive mind to study and improve. A young human soldier ran into the command center. Ma'am, we have wounded coming in from Section 7. 3 humans, 2 Vorthani. How bad? Asked Captain Chen. Martinez took a biospitter to the chest. The medic says. Zethkar watched the captain's face. For just a moment, he saw something flicker in her eyes. Pain. Maybe. But then the expression was gone, replaced by the same cold focus. Put Martinez in bed 3. Make sure he's comfortable. The soldier nodded and left. Captain Chen turned back to the tactical display like nothing had happened. Zethkar found this disturbing. Among his people, a dying warrior's last hours were sacred time. Family would gather, honor songs would be sung. Should we not visit him? Zethkar asked carefully. Captain Torres looked confused. Visit who? Martinez. The dying soldier. Martinez. Oh. Torres shrugged. He'll be in surgery for the next hour. The doc will do what she can. If Martinez wants to talk after that, sure. The casual way they discussed their comrade's death made Zethkar uncomfortable. But before he could think more about it, alarms started blaring again. "Contact, southeast perimeter," shouted the communications officer. "Major assault incoming." The command center erupted into controlled activity. Orders flew back and forth. Zethkar watched a human sergeant assign defensive positions while eating a sandwich. The man finished his meal, wiped his hands, and calmly picked up his rifle. "Sub-Commander Vexth," Zethkar called to his aide. "Take Squad 3 to reinforce the southeast wall." "Yes, sir. Should we sing the battle hymns?" Before Zethkar could answer, Captain Chen spoke up. "Please don't. The singing interferes with our communications equipment." Vexth looked insulted. "The battle hymns bring honor too." "They bring noise," Chen cut him off. "Save the honor for after we win." Zethkar had never heard anyone dismiss Vorthani battle traditions so bluntly. But Chen was already turning to other matters, assigning human squads to support positions. The battle for the southeast wall lasted 4 hours. Zethkar fought alongside human marines, watching how they moved and fought. They used cover better than Vorthani warriors, who preferred honorable face-to-face combat. The humans, shot from hidden positions, used traps and ambush tactics, and retreated when outnumbered. "Cowardly," muttered one of his warriors. But Zethkar noticed something else. The humans' tactics were working. For every human killed, they destroyed 5 devourers. The creature's superior strength and numbers meant nothing against careful planning and disciplined fire. During a brief break in fighting, he watched a human squad leader brief her team. She spoke in the same calm voice, whether discussing ammunition supplies or which soldiers would probably die in the next assault. "Johnson, you take point. Williams, cover the left flank. Rodriguez, you're our fallback position. If they break through, hold them for 30 seconds minimum before retreating." Rodriguez nodded. 30 seconds. Got it. The woman was asking Rodriguez to die for half a minute of time. And Rodriguez accepted this like it was a normal request. Zethkar felt his spine plates shiver. After the battle, he found Martinez in the medical bay. The human soldier was pale and weak, connected to life support machines. But his eyes were alert. "Commander Zethkar," Martinez said with effort. "How goes the fight? We held the southeast wall. Your people fought bravely." Martinez smiled weakly. "Good. Listen. I got a good look at their assault pattern before I got hit. They're coordinating better than our intelligence suggested. For the next 20 minutes, Martinez described devourer tactics and behavior patterns in precise detail. He talked about weapon effectiveness, movement speeds, and communication methods. Even dying, he was gathering intelligence. The big ones, the biotanks, they're slower after feeding. Hit them right after they consume biomass. Zethkar took notes, amazed. "You should rest. Save your strength." "For what?" Martinez asked with a weak laugh. "I'm done, Commander. Might as well make it useful." 2 hours later, Martinez died. He spent his final minutes dictating a tactical report to a recording device. His last words were weapon recommendations for fighting biospitters. At the funeral ceremony, Zethkar expected human mourning rituals. Instead, Captain Chen read Martinez's tactical report aloud to the assembled soldiers. The report became part of the station's defensive protocols. "Martinez found weaknesses in their biotanks," Chen announced. "We'll use his observations in tomorrow's battle plan. No songs. No ceremony. Just useful information extracted from a death and immediately put to work." That night, Zethkar couldn't sleep. He walked through the station's corridors, thinking about what he had seen. In one section, he found a human engineer named Dr. Patel working on a broken shield generator. "Working late?" Zethkar asked. Dr. Patel looked up from her tools. "The generator took damage in today's fight. If I can't fix it, we lose this whole section tomorrow." How long have you been working? 18 hours? Maybe 20. Patel went back to her repairs. Coffee helps. Zethkar watched her work. Her hands were steady despite exhaustion. She hummed quietly while splicing power cables that could kill her if she made a mistake. Are you not afraid? He asked. Patel paused. Of what? Dying? Sure. I guess. But someone has to fix the shield. Might as well be me. The simple way she said it disturbed Zethkar more than screaming fear would have. These humans talked about death like it was just another job requirement. He left Dr. Patel to her work and returned to his quarters. Outside his window, he could see Devourer forces massing for tomorrow's assault. They had doubled in size during the day. According to the tactical reports, the station had maybe 72 hours before being overrun completely. The humans knew this. They had calculated it down to the hour, and still they kept working, fighting, and planning like victory was possible. Zethkar didn't understand if this was courage or madness. Maybe there was no difference. Day 2 of the siege began with bad news. The Devourers had cut off all supply lines during the night. No ammunition. No food. No medical supplies would reach the station. Zethkar stood in the command center, watching human officers discuss their situation. They spoke in the same calm voices they used for everything else. Ammunition reserves at 40%, reported Captain Torres. Food supplies will last 6 days on half rations. Captain Chen nodded. Medical supplies? 3 days. Maybe 4 if we ration the painkillers. Zethkar waited for someone to suggest surrender or evacuation. Instead, the humans started planning how to stretch their resources. They calculated which wounded soldiers could fight with minimal medical care. They figured out which weapons used the least ammunition per kill. What about the mining equipment? Asked Dr. Patel over the communication link. The industrial fabricators could make basic explosives. Good thinking, said Chen. What do you need? Access to the chemical storage tanks, and about 6 hours. 6 hours to turn mining tools into weapons. Zethkar had seen human creativity before, but this was different. They were already planning to fight with improvised bombs and homemade weapons. A young human lieutenant looked up from his scanner. Commander, the Devourers are doing something new. They're building. On the main screen, aerial footage showed Devourer forces constructing strange organic structures around the station. The buildings pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Breeding chambers, whispered Captain Torres. They're making more troops. Zethkar felt ice in his veins. The Devourers weren't just attacking. They were setting up permanent operations. This wasn't a raid anymore. It was conquest. How long before those chambers start producing? Asked Chen, based on previous encounters. Torres consulted his datapad. 12 hours for the first batch. Then continuous production every 2 hours after that. The math was simple and terrifying. By tomorrow, the Devourers would have twice as many troops. By day 4, they would have 10 times more than the defenders could possibly handle. But the humans just added this information to their tactical calculations. No despair. No panic. Just more numbers to work with. We need to hit those chambers before they come online, said Chen. Volunteers for a raid? Every human in the room raised their hand. Zethkar stared. A raid against those positions would be suicide. The chambers were surrounded by thousands of Devourer guards. Anyone attacking them would die. I'll take Alpha Squad, said Torres. We can use the mining tunnels to get close. Negative, replied Chen. You're needed here. Lieutenant Park will lead the raid. Park was barely old enough to be called an adult by Vorthani standards. He looked excited about his suicide mission. Thank you, ma'am. When do we go? 2 hours. That gives Dr. Patel time to finish the explosives. As the meeting broke up, Zethkar approached Captain Chen privately. This raid is hopeless. You know your people will die. Chen looked at him with those serious brown eyes. Probably. But if we don't stop those chambers, we all die anyway. This way, Their deaths buy us time. Time for what? There is no escape. No rescue coming. Time to figure out our next move. Chen's voice was completely calm. There's always a next move, Commander. Even if it's just choosing how to die. That afternoon, Zethkar watched the human raiders prepare for their mission. They checked weapons, shared ammunition, and made jokes. No one acted like they were about to die. Lieutenant Park distributed photos of the breeding chambers. Remember, we need to plant explosives at the base of each structure. The biomembrane is weakest there. Sergeant Williams raised her hand. What if we can't plant all the charges? Then plant as many as you can before they kill you, Park replied casually. Williams nodded like this was perfectly reasonable. Zethkar found their attitude deeply disturbing. These humans had made peace with their own deaths. More than that, they had turned their deaths into tactical assets. Dr. Patel arrived with a cart full of improvised explosives. Pressure-sensitive detonators, she explained. Just throw them and run. They'll explode on impact. How powerful? Asked Park. Powerful enough to level a breeding chamber. Also powerful enough to kill anyone within 50 meters. Perfect. Perfect. The young lieutenant called weapons that would certainly kill him. Perfect. The raid team left through maintenance tunnels at sunset. Zethkar went to the observation deck to watch through binoculars. He could see the breeding chambers glowing in the distance, surrounded by devourer guards. An hour later, explosions lit up the horizon. Brilliant flashes destroyed 4 of the 6 chambers. The remaining guards swarmed toward the explosion sites. Only 3 humans made it back to the tunnels. Lieutenant Park wasn't among them. At the debriefing, Sergeant Williams reported their casualties with the same tone she might use to list equipment losses. Park, Rodriguez, and Kim didn't make it out, but we destroyed 4 chambers and damaged the 5th. Captain Chen made notes on her data pad. Acceptable results. The remaining chambers will slow their troop production by 60%. Acceptable results. 3 young people had died horribly, and it was acceptable results. That night, Zethkar couldn't understand why the humans bothered eating dinner. They had maybe 36 hours before being overrun, but he watched them share their reduced rations and tell stories about the dead raiders. Park always said he wanted to go out with a big explosion, laughed Williams. Kid got his wish, added Torres. That last blast probably took out 50 devourers. They turned their grief into tactical satisfaction. Even their mourning served a military purpose. Later, Zethkar found Dr. Patel in the workshop again. She was building more explosives, but these looked different, bigger, more complex. What are those for? He asked. Patel didn't look up from her work. Backup plan. What kind of backup plan? She finally met his eyes. The kind where we make sure the devourers don't get anything useful from this station. Zethkar felt a chill run down his spine. You mean? I mean, if we're going to lose anyway, we might as well take them with us. Patel returned to her work. These should be big enough to crack the asteroid's core. Turn the whole station into a debris field. That would kill everyone. Yes, she said simply. Everyone. Zethkar left the workshop feeling sick. The humans weren't just willing to die for tactical advantage. They were planning to destroy themselves and everything around them, rather than let the enemy win. He began to understand that he wasn't fighting alongside brave allies. He was trapped with creatures who had weaponized their own extinction. Outside his window, the remaining devourer breeding chambers pulsed with new life. Tomorrow would bring fresh horrors. But looking at the humans around him, Zethkar was starting to think the real horror was already here. Day 3 began with the sound of breaking walls. Zethkar woke to alarms and weapons fire. The devourers had broken through the outer defense ring during the night. Their new troops, born from the remaining breeding chambers, were pouring into the station's lower levels. In the command center, the tactical display showed red warning lights everywhere. Entire sections of the station were already lost. How many got through? Captain Chen asked calmly. At least 2,000, reported Torres. Maybe more. They're using some kind of acid to melt through our barriers. 2,000 fresh devourers, plus the original forces still outside. The defenders had fewer than 400 soldiers left alive. Zethkar expected to finally see human despair. Instead, He watched them become more focused, more efficient. Like the approaching death was sharpening their minds instead of breaking them. Initiate Fallback Protocol 7, ordered Chen. Seal sections A through D. Route all remaining power to core defenses. Fallback Protocol 7 meant abandoning the outer ring completely. It also meant abandoning anyone trapped in those sections, including wounded, who couldn't be moved. Ma'am. A young communications officer spoke up. Corporal Davis is still alive in Section C. His legs are broken. But, seal the sections, Chen repeated. The officer's hands shook as he typed the commands. Emergency blast doors slammed shut throughout the station. Anyone left on the wrong side would face the Devourers alone. Zethkar felt sick. There must be another way. There isn't. Captain Chen cut him off. Corporal Davis knows what he signed up for. So do we all. Through the security cameras, Zethkar watched Corporal Davis in Section C. The injured human had somehow reached a weapons locker. He sat propped against a wall, holding a rifle and several grenades. When the Devourers reached his position, he would make them pay for his life. But what disturbed Zethkar most was Davis's face. The man looked calm, almost peaceful, like he was exactly where he wanted to be. An hour later, explosions rocked Section C. The security feed went dark. Torres marked Davis's position as neutralized on the tactical display and moved on to other matters. The Devourers are adapting to our weapons, reported Dr. Patel. Their bio-armor is getting thicker. Our standard rounds aren't penetrating anymore. Solutions? Asked Chen. I can modify the remaining explosives, make them more focused, but that means fewer total weapons. Do it. As Dr. Patel left to work on the weapons, more bad news arrived. The Devourers had found the main power conduit. They were draining energy directly from the station's core. At current drain rate, we lose life support in 8 hours, reported the chief engineer. 8 hours. Zethkar looked around the command center. The humans received this news like all the others. No panic. No breakdown. Just another variable in their calculations. Captain Torres pulled up building schematics. We could overload the power grid, send a feedback pulse through the conduit. That would fry every system in the station, pointed out the engineer. But it would also kill any Devourers connected to the conduit. They were discussing turning off their own life support to kill enemies. Zethkar felt like he was watching madness disguised as tactics. Hold that option, said Chen. Let's see what else develops. What developed was worse. The Devourers began using captured humans as living shields. They forced prisoners to walk ahead of their troops, making it impossible to fire without killing innocents. Through the security feeds, Zethkar watched a Devourer bioform holding a human child. The girl couldn't be more than 12 years old. She had been visiting the station with her family when the siege began. They're pushing into Section F, reported Torres, using the civilian prisoners as cover. The child on the screen looked terrified but tried to be brave. She reminded Zethkar of his own daughter back on the Vorthani homeworld. Captain Chen studied the tactical display. How many prisoners? 15 that we can confirm. Maybe more. Zethkar waited for Chen to order a rescue attempt. Instead, she asked, acceptable losses to clear Section F? Torres consulted his data pad. With the prisoners as shields? We'd lose maybe 30 soldiers, plus all 15 prisoners. Unacceptable. We can't spare 30 people. Zethkar felt relief, then confusion, as Chen continued. Seal Section F. Pump in nitrogen gas. The command center fell silent. Even the humans looked shocked. Ma'am, Torres said carefully. We'll die quickly and painlessly, along with every devourer in that section. Chen's voice never changed tone. It's more merciful than what the Devourers will do to them. Zethkar couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're going to murder civilians to kill enemies? Chen looked at him with those cold brown eyes. I'm going to end their suffering before it gets worse. And eliminate 50 Devourers in the process. The child. She's just a little girl. She's already dead. Chen stated flatly. The only question is how much pain she experiences before dying. This way is faster. The gas was released. Through the security feeds, Zethkar watched 15 innocent people fall asleep and never wake up. Along with them, 50 devourers collapsed as the nitrogen replaced their oxygen. But the tactical display showed Chen was right. Section F was clear. The devourers' advance was stopped. Efficient, Torres noted, updating his reports. Efficient. They had just committed mass murder and called it efficient. Later that day, Zethkar found Dr. Patel working on what looked like a massive bomb. The backup plan? He asked. She nodded. Fusion core overload device. It'll turn this whole asteroid into a small star for about 10 seconds. And everyone dies. Everyone dies. Patel connected 2 more wires. But the data survives. We're loading everything we've learned about the Devourers onto a tight beam transmission. It'll fire automatically when the core goes critical. Zethkar stared at the device. You've been planning this since the beginning. Of course. As soon as we saw how many Devourers were coming, we knew how this would end. Patel tested the timer mechanism. The only question was whether we could learn enough about them to help the next battle. The next battle? Somewhere else. With different people who won't make our mistakes. She smiled grimly. That's how humans fight wars, Commander. We lose battles to win wars. As evening came, the Devourers launched their final assault. Thousands of them poured through the breached sections, overwhelming the remaining defenses through sheer numbers. Zethkar fought alongside human soldiers as they retreated toward the station core. He watched humans use themselves as living tripwires for explosives. He saw wounded soldiers deliberately draw devourer attacks away from healthy troops. He watched a human sergeant hold a grenade against his chest while devourers surrounded him. Every death was calculated. Every sacrifice served a tactical purpose. The humans fought like machines, designed only for efficient killing and dying. In the final command bunker, only 50 defenders remained alive. Around them, the Devourers gathered for the last assault. Captain Chen activated her final protocols. All personnel, this is the commander. Core overload in 60 minutes. Prepare for transmission of all tactical data. She turned to Zethkar with that same calm expression she had worn throughout the siege. I'm sorry you got caught up in this, Commander. But someone needs to tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them what? Tell them the Devourers can be stopped. But only by people willing to stop themselves first. Zethkar finally understood the true horror. The humans hadn't been slowly driven to desperate measures. They had been planning their own destruction from the very beginning. They had turned suicide into a weapon of war, and they had done it all while maintaining perfect, cold sanity. They weren't brave heroes or tragic victims. They were something much more frightening. They were efficient. The rescue ships arrived exactly when Captain Chen said they would. Zethkar was still trying to understand how she had known. The human commander had calculated their arrival time down to the minute, planning her final protocols around a rescue she couldn't have contacted. Human naval doctrine, Captain Torres explained, as they prepared the evacuation shuttles. When a position can't be held, they always send ships to recover intelligence. The data is more important than the people. More important than the people. Even in rescue, humans treated their own lives as secondary to information. The evacuation was brutally efficient. 37 survivors total. 22 humans. 15 Vorthani. The shuttle bays were designed for exactly this capacity. Chen had planned for this too. As Zethkar strapped himself into a shuttle seat, he watched the humans around him. They showed no relief at being rescued, no joy at survival. They just quietly organized the data they had gathered during the siege. Dr. Patel sat across from him, typing notes on a datapad. The acid adaptation was faster than expected, she muttered. They evolved new bioarmor in less than 18 hours. She was writing a scientific report about creatures that had nearly killed them all. Through the shuttle window, Zethkar could see the mining station falling apart. The remaining human forces were executing their final protocols. Explosions lit up different sections, as they systematically destroyed anything useful to the Devourers. Captain Chen's voice came through the shuttle's communication system. All shuttles, prepare for core detonation in 10 minutes. Maintain safe distance. 10 minutes. Hundreds of humans were still fighting in the station. They would all die when the core exploded. Shouldn't we wait for more survivors? Zethkar asked. The shuttle pilot, a young human woman, looked at him with confusion. Sir, this is everyone who was selected for evacuation. Selected? They had chosen who would live and who would die before the battle even ended. Torres noticed Zethkar's expression. Commander, we can't save everyone. So we save the people with the most important skills and knowledge. What about the others? The soldiers still fighting? They're buying us time to escape. That's their job. Their job. Dying was just another assignment to complete. 5 minutes later, the mining station exploded. The fusion core overload turned the entire asteroid into a brief, brilliant star. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. Every devourer in the area was instantly vaporized, along with all evidence of their breeding technology. In the shuttle, the humans watched their former base become a miniature sun. They took measurements, recorded radiation levels, and calculated the blast radius. Good yield, noted Dr. Patel. The core overload was more efficient than projected. Efficient, that word again. Hundreds of their own people had just died, and they called it efficient. The shuttle docked with a human battleship called the Retribution. As they disembarked, Zethkar expected to see mourning ceremonies or memorial services. Instead, he was immediately brought to a debriefing room. For 6 hours, human intelligence officers asked detailed questions about everything he had witnessed. They wanted to know devourer tactics, adaptation rates, and weapon effectiveness. They recorded his observations about human performance under extreme stress. The gas attack in Section F? Asked one officer. What was the devourer reaction time? Zethkar felt sick remembering the murdered civilians. You want tactical analysis of that atrocity? The officer looked genuinely confused. Sir, it was a combat action with measurable results. We need to know if similar tactics would be effective in future engagements. Future engagements. They were planning to use poison gas on civilians again. After the debriefing, Zethkar was assigned quarters on the human ship. He tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Captain Chen's calm face as she ordered the death of a 12-year-old girl. 3 days later, they reached a Galactic Council station. Zethkar was scheduled to give testimony about the Devourer threat and the human alliance. Before the hearing, he reviewed the official reports. According to human records, the defense of Kepler 7b was a tactical success. They had gathered valuable intelligence about Devourer capabilities while inflicting significant casualties on enemy forces. The death of nearly 800 human soldiers was listed as acceptable losses within projected parameters. The murder of 15 civilians was recorded as necessary tactical action to prevent enemy exploitation of hostages. The destruction of the entire station was called successful denial of strategic resources to hostile forces. Every atrocity had been turned into clean, military language. At the council hearing, Zethkar sat at a witness table, facing representatives from dozens of species. They wanted to know about Devourer capabilities and the effectiveness of the human alliance. Commander Zethkar, asked the Altarian delegate, would you recommend further military cooperation with humans? Zethkar looked out at the assembled aliens. Proud warriors from a dozen different species. None of them understood what they were asking. Humans are effective allies, he said carefully. They will help you win battles. And their combat capabilities? Superior. They adapt quickly to new threats. They use resources efficiently. They achieve tactical objectives. All true. All terrifying. Any concerns about human military doctrine? Zethkar paused. How could he explain what he had seen? How could he make them understand that humans had weaponized their own capacity for sacrifice? Humans think differently about warfare than other species, he said finally. They are willing to pay costs that others might find Disturbing. What kind of costs? Asked the council chairman. Zethkar remembered Captain Chen's face as she watched her people die. Any cost necessary, including costs you haven't thought of yet. The hearing ended with a recommendation for expanded human military partnerships. Most council species wanted human allies after hearing about their effectiveness against the Devourers. But Zethkar included a personal addendum in his final report. A warning that was classified and seen only by senior military leaders. Humans are not cruel. They are not evil. They are worse than either. They are perfectly rational about their own extinction. They have made peace with the idea that their species might need to die to achieve victory. This makes them the most dangerous allies in the galaxy, not because they will betray you, but because they will expect you to be willing to die as efficiently as they do. If you fight alongside humans, understand what you are accepting. They will win, but they will win using methods that will change you. You will either become more like them, or you will break under the weight of their expectations. I have seen humans turn children into acceptable losses and call it mercy. I have seen them plan their own extinction and call it victory. I have seen them weaponize everything, including their own capacity for love and sacrifice. The Devourers were monsters. But the humans who stopped them were something else entirely. They were efficient monsters. And that is far more frightening. 6 months after Kepler 7b, Zethkar returned to the Vorthani homeworld. He was honored as a hero and promoted to fleet commander. But he found he could no longer fight like his ancestors. In his first battle after the siege, he caught himself calculating acceptable casualties. He found himself thinking about which of his warriors would die most efficiently. He wondered if the enemy position could be taken faster by sacrificing his own troops. These thoughts terrified him. The humans had infected him with their way of thinking. He had become efficient. Zethkar requested retirement from active duty. The Vorthani Council was confused but granted his request. A war hero who no longer wanted to fight was unprecedented. Now he lived quietly on a farming moon, trying to forget what he had learned about humans and about himself. But sometimes, when he heard news of human victories in distant battles, he would remember Captain Chen's calm voice. There's always a next move, Commander. Even if it's just choosing how to die. The humans were spreading across the galaxy now, offering their military expertise to any species that asked. And every species that fought alongside them would learn what Zethkar had learned. That efficiency was more frightening than any enemy. Because once you understood how humans fought, you could never unknow it. You could never go back to thinking of war as anything other than a mathematical problem to be solved. The true horror wasn't that humans were willing to die for victory. The true horror was that their way of thinking was so logical, so reasonable, so obviously correct that it was impossible to argue against. And once you understood their logic, you became infected by it. You became a little bit more human yourself. In his garden on the farming moon, Zethkar grew flowers and vegetables, simple, living things that had nothing to do with tactics or efficiency. But even there, he sometimes caught himself calculating optimal planting patterns. The humans had won more than just the battle at Kepler 7b. They had won his mind. And somewhere in the galaxy, they were winning the minds of others, one alliance at a time. That was how humans fought wars, not just against enemies, but against the very idea that there were limits to what rational beings would sacrifice for victory. And they always won.